Record. Recording in progress. So welcome today to basically our rendering sequences for animation lecture. So today starts a brand new era for us in shading and lighting. Until now, we've been doing everything in Maya. And today we are going to be utilizing Unreal in addition to rendering out of Maya using the Arnold software. So the way it's going to work is you guys are going to choose either the Cornell Rabbit or the still life. Whatever you lit in project 3 becomes your project 4. And in addition to that, we've got a real-time simulation that you guys are going to render out of Unreal. Now, Unreal Engine that we're using, that Full Sail has decided to standardize, is 4.25.4. So we have basically a Unreal project set up for you already. And all you need to do is open it up, make sure you have all the settings correct inside Unreal, and then you are going to do a version of batch rendering out of Unreal using the Unreal renderer. Same thing that you would do if you were making a cinematic inside Unreal. So if you did the Cornell Rabbit, you will be happy to know that you will get your revenge in the bunny burn simulation, where the poor bunny sitting on the stand spontaneously bursts into flames and kind of melts, disappears. Now, example of let's bring that one to front. So this is the still life. If you did the still life for project 3, this is what your render is going to look like after you import an animated camera that we have set up. And you will render out 70 frames. Now, today, the max you're going to render is 70 frames. If you did the Cornell Rabbit or the still life, it's 70 frames. Unreal is 70 frames. Unreal honestly takes the least amount of time. It takes more time to do all the prep work in Unreal than it does to actually render it. But Arnold is the opposite. Arnold, not much prep time, but then you have to wait for 70 frames to render. So to get an idea of how long that might take, let's get kind of a consensus here on how long each frame took, or how long your final frame took for either the rabbit or the still life. So somebody chime in. So how long to render the Cornell Rabbit or the still life? How long did it take to render out your final frames in project 3? If you forgot, open up your template. In theory, you should have recorded that information in the Photoshop template. Yeah, Brianna? You did the rabbit? 2:13. Okay. So 2 minutes, 13 seconds for Brianna. Anybody else? Brian? Brianna? Oh, Brianna just gave me the answer. Duh. Clifton, Darian, Derek, Frenzy, Joni, Kentavious, Nathaniel. Tell me, which one you did, Still Life or Cornell Rabbit, and how long did it take to render the final frame in project 3? Anybody out there? Hello? I think they've all disappeared. Cornell Rabbit, 4 minutes, 20 seconds. Okay, thank you. Darian, did you do the still life? Okay, good. All right, so Darian did the still life, which was 3:02. Kentavious did 4:20. Anybody else join in? Let us know. Welcome. So the reason I'm asking again is because this will give you an idea how long. So Frenzy said 3 minutes. So this will give you an idea for how long it will take to render all your frames. So you can take your final, time and multiply it by 70. So for example, let's bring up the old calculator. Where are you? Come on, there we go. All right, so 2 minutes, 13, that's like 2.2 minutes times 70 frames. So it's going to take you 154 minutes. Divide that by 60. So it'll take you roughly about 2.5 hours to render out 70 frames in Arnold. So if you did 4, so that's like 4.3 times 70. So 301 divided by 60. That'll roughly be about 5 hours to render. All right, so if you did 3 minutes, multiply that by 70, that's 210 divided by 60. So 3.5 hours. So that'll basically give you an idea how long it will take to render out 70 frames. Now, not every frame renders the same amount of time. Some take a little bit longer, some take a little bit less, depending on how much has moved between frames and basically anything else that's going on in the scene. For us, it's simple. We've only got light, we've got shadow, we've got objects. It's not like we've got reflections, we've got transparency with glass or anything. So it's actually going to take us, it's not too bad of a time. So that will give you an idea of how long that portion of the assignment will take, whether you did the still life or the Cornell Rabbit. Unreal, honestly, like I said, it's going to take you more time to set it up than it will be actually rendering it. Rendering literally takes, for me, I wasn't streaming, I wasn't recording. It took me under 30 seconds to render out 70 frames because it's in real time. They're all calculated already. Okay, so today I don't have a lot of lecture. Only the first half is actually going to be lecture with material. The second half, I want you guys to work on at least the Unreal part of the project. And then in lab today, do the Arnold portion, where it's going to take a little bit longer. You can get set up, get rolling. Frank can help you guys if there's any issues. So let's take a look at a couple things for the week. I'll have office hours tomorrow from 10 to 12, 1 to 4. On Tuesday and Thursday, Frank will be running the optional open lab. This is for campus and online students on Thursday from 1 to 5 p.m. Ah, Chanel, there we go. All right, so this project will be due tomorrow night, which you really should not have an issue getting done before midnight. Like I said, you can get the bulk of the work done at the second half of lecture for Unreal, and then you can get the bulk of it done in lab. So make sure you attend lab to get help. All right. So everything is pretty well documented. What I'm going to do is go over the workflow because it's going to be a little bit different for Arnold because we are rendering out multiple frames. We're rendering out an animation. So that involves us using Maya's render view to render a sequence because Arnold does not have, or I should say, the free version of Arnold that we use does not have the ability to batch render or render a sequence. But we can render out a sequence out of Maya, which is actually how, Arnold on their website recommends you render out an animation. We render it out, and then we have to run the denoiser separately after we render out all the frames. So we get all the frames rendered, then we run them through the Arnold denoiser. It's standalone. It's not like the one that we have inside the Arnold render view. That does it automatically for you. This, you have to manually do it, unfortunately. But it's an easy process. And then documentation for the bunny burn, which is in Unreal. All right, so like I said, if you did the Cornell rabbit, this is your animation, kind of like a little mild orbit. And the end frame is basically the resting position for the final version of the still life, if you did the rabbit. So you will need to download the Cornell Rabbit Anim Render Cam ma.zip. That is an animated camera. That's all it is. We import that animated camera into your scene, and you use that to render from. That way, when you render, it goes, oh, animation. As long as you've set it up correctly, it will render. Got a reference movie for you if you need it. Take a look where that is right here, I believe. There we go. So all your basically documentation, all the stuff you need is inside the activity. All right, so here's just a quick little video of the rabbit. Here's one of the still life. Again, it's kind of an orbit and a truck in at the same time. And here are the documents for doing each. So this will take you to our OneDrive, click accessibility, and you can download it if you want to as a PDF. So the entire workflow in Arnold and also After Effects. You will need After Effects for this assignment, for Unreal and for Arnold, because that's how we make our movie. You guys will be turning in a movie. All right, so that is the Cornell rabbit, still life. Actually, honestly, the workflow is really the same, just the names have been changed to protect the innocent here. So it really is the same stuff, just it's going to look different because it's a different scene. Then down here, this is your Unreal. Here's your movie, just a quick reference movie. Here are the instructions. Now, the instructions are a bit longer because there's a lot of steps in Unreal that you need to do to prepare it. So give it a second to load in. I don't know why it's taking so long now. There we go. All right, so I have it from just basic. You're in the Epic Games launcher. You launch the right engine. Show you how to navigate to where your Unreal project is. When you download it, it normally goes into downloads. Ideally, you can move that into the Unreal folder in your documents. If you choose to work out of it out of the downloads, nothing bad will happen. In fact, I'll probably demo that because I'm lazy. But just be aware that we're used to seeing in Unreal, all your projects show up in the open existing project. When you don't see what you want there, this is where you navigate. And there's a little more button, or it's actually, I think it's, yeah, more. It's a little button that says more. It'll take you to browse your computer. And I'll show you that because I'm going to be doing the same thing. So basically, you just go through, you set everything up for the rabbit. It's already been lit. It's already been, all the different parts have been animated. There's a bunch of little different parts going on. Besides particles and smoke, there's also lights that get brighter and get dimmer, just to kind of give the illusion that the rabbit's bursting into flames, and that all the light that is visible is a result of the flame and smoke. And then all the steps necessary to render your stuff out, and then take it into After Effects. So once you're in After Effects, that process is the same to make any movie, at least for our class. Because we're going to be working with a series of frames. You're going to render out 70 frames. So the nice thing about After Effects, you can select a frame and it'll go, oh, I see you have a frame number at the end. Do you want to make that a movie? And usually the default is clicked on for you. Yeah, it's a sequence. Make it a movie. It'll automatically open it up, bring all the frames in, and display it for you. So it's actually quite nice. All right, so naming. Unreal is going to be Unreal Engine, UE_anim, and Arnold_anim for the Arnold scene. All right, so you're going to give us 2 movies, 1 Maya scene file, and then your Unreal project. Your Unreal project, I have inside the documents, I have a couple places where you're going to save little nodes in there, and that tells me you did the right job. Because I'm going to open it up and take a look at what you've done in Unreal. In fact, half of this assignment is how good do the frames look in the movie? The other half is how well did you follow directions in setting it up in Maya or in Unreal? So just so you guys know. And here are your downloads. So if you did the Cornell Rabbit, there's your render cam. If you did the still life, there's your render cam. Here's your Unreal project. There's a reference movie, reference movie, reference movie. Okay, let's see. So all of this is pretty much everything that I just talked about. All right. So that is kind of a brief overview of what we've got going on. We're not ready to take a break yet. So let me ask the group, what would you like me to, well, let's do the Unreal first. That way everybody can get an idea of what it looks like. And then I will demo either the Cornell Rabbit or the still life, whatever the group consensus is. Now, we're not going to wait for me to render all those frames. I've already got the frames rendered, but I'm going to show you the process. Before I do that, though, any questions so far? Brian, Brianna, Chanel, Clifton, Darian, Derek, Frenzy, Joni, Kentavious, Nathaniel. Any questions so far? Good. All right. Chanel's good. Brianna's good. Okay, Clifton's good. Frenzy's good. Kentavious, Nathaniel, awesome. All right, so what I'm going to do is let me download the Unreal project just like you guys would. So there's the Bunny Burn Unreal. I stripped this down a lot because when I first made this project, you get all the starter content and everything. It's like 700 megabytes. So I said, whoa, no, we don't need all that stuff. So I basically went through, stripped out all the stuff that you don't need. So it's really kind of a small project. So don't be fooled by, hey, Unreal's not too bad. If you're working on a big scene, it's going to be big because you're working on an entire environment. But like I said, I pared this down quite a bit. All right, there we go. This is what it looks like. Now, when you guys render out your movies will show up in the saved folder in your project in movie renders. That's where everything will be. Now, the one thing that you're not going to turn in to me when we're done this is, well, for one thing, you're going to rename your project folder to the naming convention I have in FSO. All right, but you're not going to give me your individual renders. You're going to give me your movie. The movie's a lot smaller. And honestly, the renders are going to be, they're going to be close to 100 megabytes or 100 gigabytes. No, sorry, megabytes, 100 megabytes, because there's going to be 70 frames or about, let's say 1.5 meg at least, because they're going to be EXR files. All right, so there's my Unreal project in downloads. I'm actually going to leave it there. Like I said, the best workflow is actually putting it inside your Unreal projects folder, usually found in your documents. So I could go documents, here's Unreal, I could drop it in there. But I'm just going to show you guys, if you don't do that, how do you find a project that's not listed? All right, so what I'm going to do is let's open up the launcher. Now, last night I was running through this and my launcher decided to crash on me. So I had to do a bunch of stuff. Hopefully you don't have that issue. Launcher is usually pretty stable, but every once in a while it gets a little ornery. All right, so you find your engine inside library, and you should have 4.25.4. Now, you may have the latest and greatest version, and you can download as many versions as your computer can handle. So if you go somewhere to work, they're liable to go, okay, for this game we're working on, you're going to be working in this engine. For this game, you're going to be working on this engine, only because they've been built there and they work in those engines. Newer versions, Unreal, they've tweaked stuff, and some things are not compatible. Okay, so I'm going to launch 4.25.4, like it says here. Give it a couple seconds. If this is your first time launching Unreal, the editor, it may take a little bit longer to open. And once you open it, it may say something like building shader files, 3,000 files. Don't be afraid, it's not really that bad. You just have to let it finish, so it's build a library, so it knows how to display stuff. All right, so here's recent projects, but I don't have any that are visible to me. So I'm going to click on more. And I don't see it here under my projects, which is in my Unreal. I'm going to click Browse down at the bottom. Browse will basically open up a Maya window. And for me, I've got mine in Downloads. There's my Unreal project. And there is the Unreal project.u project, which stands for Unreal Project. So that's what I want to click on, and that's what I want to open. So in theory, everything's theoretical till it actually happens on a computer. There we go. So I'm going to make my window a little bit smaller here. All right, so I've got it open. Now what do? I don't recognize anything here. All right, so we did all that. We're here. Then once the project opens, double click on the new bunny burn level, which is down here at the bottom. New bunny burn, double click. That opens up the bunny burn. And then you want to go into the camera that I've got set up to render from. And basically you go to viewport, Left click on cameras and choose the Cine Camera Actor 1. So here, down under placed cameras, Cine Camera Actor 1. That brings in the close-up. You don't have to move anything. So once that's done, then we go into the world outliner, which is just like Maya's outliner, shows you all the assets in the scene. And we're going to select the B-burn level sequence. A level sequence is where you have different parts of your project. You have like maybe you're doing an environment. So you might have an inside hallway. Then you might have another level that might be upstairs, and then another level that might be outside. So world level or world outliner, we're going to click on the B-burn level sequence right there. Then down here under general, we're going to open that level sequence. That will give you the sequencer, which is where all the animation takes place. So I kind of like to make it small, and I like to position it down here under my viewport. All right, so once I have the sequence open, size and position it under the viewport, we are going to go to the playback options, which is this little button right here. Left click, start is at 0. This is 70 frames. So the end, you just click on it and change it to 70 frames. What it's going to do is only play back from 0 to 70. So 0 to 70. Then you want to click this little button right here. This will save the frame sequence start and end that you just put in. This will also tell me when I open it up and I check it, oh, okay, you went in and you adjusted the play options. Now you can hit the play button down here in the sequencer, and it should have the bunny burst into flames. And you can run it as many times as you want. You just want to make sure it plays through once and it's okay. All right, so everything works. That's great. Satisfied that it works properly, we close the sequencer. We go to the window, which is up here, the main menu in Unreal. Go to Cinematics, and we go to Movie Render Queue. So Movie Render Queue is how we set up to render a sequence. You're basically batch rendering at this point. But we don't have anything in here, so we need to add in our level sequence by clicking this little plus button right here. You'll see your new level sequence, click on it, and now it's listed in the jobs to render. You don't want to render yet because you got to set it up to render the right size, the right number of frames, and the right quality level. All right, so here we are going under settings, and we're going to click on the unsaved configuration here. All right, so these are the default settings. We want to add in more settings. So basically, under settings, we're going to add in anti-aliasing. It shows up in the list right here. Then we're going to add in high resolution. And then we're going to add in, down under output, EXR sequence, 16-bit. So we've added anti-aliasing, high resolution, EXR sequence, and we turn off JPEG because we don't want JPEGs. JPEGs are low quality. So all you do is click on this little switch and it goes off. So now inside settings here, you want to click on the output section down at the bottom. And this is where we change in our output resolution. Okay, we change it to 960 by 540 right here. So you just type in 960, go to 540, and then use custom frame rate. By default, it's trying to give you basic movie frame rate, which is 24 frames a second, not high enough. We want 30 frames. So you click on this button, go down and change it to 30 frames a second. Then we go down under frames and we want to use custom playback range. We want to start at 0 and end at 70. So far, so good. Now, under presets, we're going to save these settings by clicking Save as Preset up top here. And give it your last name, first name. So then you click the Save button. Then you click Accept. And now you can see under your settings, you've got it set up to have a preset. So if you have to redo all these frames again, you've already got the preset set. All you do is select your presets. It fills in all the information automatically, and you're good to go. You don't have to type in everything from scratch again. So now at this point, we're in pretty good shape. After we clicked Accept, then we're going to click on Render Local. And that's going to bring up our little friend here, the movie pipeline render. So it's going to render. The preview that we're looking at is low quality. When that window disappears, you're done. Your frames are done. So then you close the movie render queue by just clicking the X button up top. Then you want to go to the File menu and Save All. This will save everything in your project. So if you have to open it again and re-render, all your settings are in there. Save all. So far, life is pretty good. All right. So now, in theory, we can quit out of the editor. We saved it. Everything's there. So let's go take a look and make sure in downloads, Unreal, saved, movie renders, there are my frames. So I'm just going to kind of step through them, not going to see anything for like almost the first second, then a little bit of smoke, and then boom, goodbye, bunny. No, there we go. So I got my frames. And you'll notice that you don't really get frame 0 or frame 70. It's okay. You're good. You have everything set up correctly. You're all set to go. So that takes care of the Unreal part. Like I said, it's really not too bad. This is pretty much the same process you would use to render out any cinematic of anything you're working on. Even if you're just doing a simple animation, you can render a movie out like this. Now, there are other ways to render it in Unreal. You can basically render it sort of in the viewport. They call it a viewport capture. The trouble is it tends to be a lot lower quality. And that's why I like doing this. And it doesn't take that long. So if you're doing something that, you want to make it a final presentation or proof of concept, render it out of here rather than out of that viewport, because then you're going to get better quality. And the whole idea is always display your best possible work. All right, so that takes care of the Unreal portion. Anybody have any questions so far? Makes sense? How about out there in Zoom land? Any questions? Any questions? Okay, Clifton's good. Contavious is good. Okay. All right, so now we're at the point of let's go and actually put this into After Effects. So we got all our frames, we're set to go. Before you launch After Effects, my recommendation is quit out of Maya if you're running Maya, quit out of Unreal, even quit out of the Unreal launcher. All right, the Epic Games launcher, only because After Effects is a memory hog like Photoshop and Maya. So I'm going to go in and let's get rid of Epic Games here. And let's launch After Effects. So while that's launching, I'm going to grab a quick drink here. There we go. Got me worried, Adobe. Thought you were going to get all Photoshop on me. All right, so when you first launch After Effects, you should get this little home window. First thing you want to do is create a new project. New project. I'm not going to name it yet because I want to bring my footage in before anything happens. So the best way to bring your footage in is to select the new composition from footage button right here. If you do that, it will automatically create a composition which in After Effects is equivalent to having something come in at the right size or right resolution. It'll bring all the frames in and place it for you in the timeline. So you want to click on that. Then you want to navigate to where you have your frames. For me, they're in my downloads. They're under my Bunny Burn project. They're in saved, movie renders. There we go. All I have to do is select the first frame and it'll go, oh, OpenEXR, import as footage, sequence. Yes, why thank you, that's what I want. Then you click the open button. It's really pretty quick. It brings all the frames in, drops it down into the timeline. And then all you have to do is down here, if the timeline area is selected, just hit the space bar and it should play the animation for you. Now, the first time through, it'll be kind of slow and jerky till it builds a preview. But after that, that's your animation. And you can drag it around if you want. Now is a good time to save your After Effects project. Since you brought it in, it's in the timeline, it's the right size, it's 960 by 540. Perfect. File, save. And I always like to put it into the folder that has my frames in it. Why? Well, just because it's going to be in the same location. And just like Maya, After Effects uses the location of the frames. When it saves, it knows that location. If you move it, it'll go, hey, the connection's broken. I can't find their frames. All right, so let's go Unreal burn. For now, and 2021-04. So going to hit save. There we go. Now, if anything happens, I got my project saved. I can just open up the After Effects project and go to work. All right, so we got a bit of work to do here in After Effects. First thing we want to do is add a text layer, and you guys are going to put in your watermark, which is your last name underscore first name underscore term ID, which for us is 2021 underscore 04. So back here in After Effects, just down here, make sure my timeline area is selected as opposed to, project area up here. And then you go to Layer, New, Text. Inside text, it creates a new layer, puts it on top of your frames, and this is where you can put in your watermark. Now, the nice thing about After Effects is I can scale it vertically if I want, just by clicking those blue numbers and dragging to the right or dragging to the left. I can do the same thing here. If I want to move it positionally inside the frame, I go down here into my timeline area, expand my new layer, expand transform, and under position, there are X, Y coordinates you can just drag around. So if I want to scale it, I'm going to go back here. Let's scale this in a little. Right about there. And make sure the opacity is 15%, just like Photoshop for your naming. 15%. Once you're done with that, you are set to go. I'm going to save my project again. Now we're going to export this to the render queue. Everything's about rendering. Yes, you are going to render out of After Effects. That's how it makes the movie. So we go up to File, Export, Add to Render Queue. That's going to bring up a separate tab. There's my timeline area. There's my render queue. So this is where we change our output module and where we output the movie to. All right, so output module, that's the first thing we're going to do. We click under lossless, that little blue highlights, that brings up the output module settings. If you are on a PC, you need to change the format to QuickTime, because I think it's probably like AVI or something like that. For a Mac, it's probably automatically going to be on QuickTime already. We're going to change the format because we don't want animation. We want to change it to Apple's ProRes 422 LT codec. It's basically a compression format that works really well, makes a small file size and decent quality. So Apple ProRes 422 LT. Click OK. Here in the output module settings, I like to turn off audio. Why? Well, because there is no audio, so why have it look for audio that's not there? It's nothing bad will happen if you forget to not turn it off, but make your computer do less work. So I click OK. So far, so good. I want to change where it's going. So under output 2, I'm going to put it back inside my Unreal project with the frames. And let's call this Unreal. No, Unreal. Burn. '21. Let's go underscore 04. All right. So click save. Now I'm all set. After that is good, then all we have to do is click the render button. It'll go through, play a little sound for you. I'm going to save my project. And before I quit out of After Effects, let me go look at my project, make sure that I have my movie. There it is. On a Mac, you can just double click and open it up. If you're on a PC, you're probably not going to be able to play an MOV file unless you right click on it, and hopefully you have QuickTime installed. If not, you may have to use something like VLC, but I have not had any issues with students on PCs that have done it. They usually have no problem. So now we can play the movie. There we go. So now I can quit out. Like I said, before submitting your Unreal project folder, rename it, and then remove the frames out of the movie renders folder. In fact, what you can do is just move this whole folder out, rename your folder, zip it up, and that's what you give us as a submission. Make sense? Anybody have any questions about the Unreal workflow or the process? All right, so I'm going to drop my stuff back in here. Why not? I'll save it for a little bit. Okay. Trying to make sure everything's here. Good. Okay. All right, so that takes care of the Unreal. Now, like I said, that part you can get done. You know, even if you take your time, it shouldn't take you any longer than, I would say, 30 minutes, an hour tops. Even if you stop, read the directions, go do the thing, come back, read the directions, go do it in Unreal. The next part, like I said, the setup for Arnold is not bad, but the thing that's going to take the most amount of time is going to be waiting for your renders to finish. All right, so let's find out first off let's take a consensus here. What would you like to see demoed? Would you like to see the Cornell Rabbit or the still life? So, whoops. So far, I got 2 rabbits. Okay, we got the rabbit, Cornell Rabbit, rabbit. So that's 4, 5. Okay, so it looks so far pretty unanimous. So let's do the Cornell Rabbit. There we go. All right, so let's go back to FSO, and let's load in the directions. All right, so this is going to be for the Cornell Rabbit that you lit in Project 3. If you did the still life, you need to do the still life, because there is no project file for this. You need to download the render cam. All right, so why did I do that? Let's go back here. Let's go down and download the Cornell Rabbit Anim Render Cam. It is just a Maya file with a camera in it. That is all it is. Let's go into lesson 4. And here's my, no, that's not it. This is it right here. And let's put these in. Okay, so these should be just my lighting. Make sure no images. Here's my frames. Let me make a new folder here for my denoised frames. Now, the reason I'm doing this is because I've already got it denoised. I forgot I didn't clean it up. All right, so it says Bunny Burn, but that's the wrong name. So let's get rid of all these denoised frames. And you can see how the process works using the Arnold denoiser. So you can see always name your project correctly. Don't do what I just did, which was rename it Bunny Burn when it was not, in fact, Bunny Burn. So when you get done, you will not have any denoised frames. You will have just raw frames like I'm about to show you now. No, it didn't work. All right. Oh, there's my folder. One second. Come on, get in there. That's it. All right, let me get rid of all this other stuff too. There we go. And with that, no, I don't want autosave. Okay. So First thing I want to do, launch Maya, set my project to the right folder, open up my scene file, make sure everything's okay, make sure I got the right version of my scene that's got lighting in it. I'm all set to go. And then I've already downloaded the animated camera. I'm going to move that into my project folder in scenes so I can import the camera and not have to move around outside of Maya. Hopefully that will make sense. All right, so set project. Lesson 4. There we go, Arnold. Let's open up the Cornell Rabbit, and that I have it changed to project 4, but it should not have any animation in it. And it does not. Good. All I've got is my render cam, and let's make sure this is the final version. Okay, that looks pretty good. Everything's there. So here is my Cornell Rabbit animated camera. Here's my project folder. I'm going to drag my animated camera into my scenes folder. So now everything is in the right location. All right, so I set my project. I downloaded the camera. Now I want to import the Cornell Rabbit anim render cam into my scene file. These are the import options you need to use. So back at Maya, where are you? Maya. I did do that. All right. So let's go File, Import Options. Always use the options box. Under Import Options, make sure you have Use Namespaces unchecked. Change Resolve to Clashing Nodes with the file name. That means if what you are trying to import already exists inside your scene with the same name, it will automatically add the file name to it so it doesn't have a conflict. Like you can't have two files called RenderCam. You can't have two nodes with exactly the same name. So it would say Cornell Rabbit, AnimCam, RenderCam. But fortunately for this, I have the node renamed properly. So when you're importing, I always recommend you do this. This way, it will not add the file name to the node that you're bringing in. Like if you're bringing in a whole bunch of objects from another scene, it will put the file name in front of each object name. It's really a pain. So turn off Use Namespace, resolve clashing nodes with the file name, and hit Import, find your scene, which is right here, Cornell Rabbit Anim Render Cam. Click Import. Continue. Doesn't look like anything happened, but if you go into your outliner, there is your new animated render cam. And notice it doesn't have a weird, goofy name in front of it. It just says CR Anim Render Cam. Now, I can go under Panels, Perspective, and there's my render cam. And if I just hit the play button in the timeline, there we go. I can see my rabbit move a little bit. So far, so good. Now let's set it up for actual animation, the right number of frames, just like we did in Unreal, and set up the camera and set up everything to render properly. All right, so I'm going to save as. And let's give this a unique name. There we go. All right. So far, so good. Now what do we do? All right. In the timeline, we start the start and end of the animation and the playback range to 1 for the start, 1 and 1 here. And then the ending is going to be 70. 70 here. And it should automatically make it 70 there. So now I've got all 70 frames. There we go. Good. So now we set up our render settings for rendering a sequence. So render settings, make sure it's set for Arnold under common. This is where you want to have your frames. Give it a simple name. So this one's going to be Cornell Rabbit. Okay, image format's going to be EXR. Under compression here, you want to make sure that zip with tiled is selected, which it should be automatically, and you want to add in merge AOVs. AOVs are how we include all the denoise information for batch rendering. They're basically, it stands for arbitrary output variables. They're just a bunch of output options that you can add when the file writes that information inside the file for you. It's called metadata. It's usually at the top of a file when it's read. All right, so color space, use output transforms. That's good. Frame animation, you want to change it from name.extension to name.number.extension. That dot number is your frame number. So if you look up top here, it's going to go, oh, okay, file name is camera. No, I don't want camera, but we'll work on that in a minute. Frame padding right underneath, it's kind of grayed out. If you highlight it, it should be 3. It's going to make 3 digits for your frame number, like 001, 002, 0050, 00100. Or it's not 0. Well, for 100, it would be 100. So my bad. But you get the idea. If you had hundreds of frames, you probably give it a 4-digit pad, which means it would have 4 digits. Always have an extra 0 in the front in case it runs into 999. And then goes to 1,000 and doesn't overwrite your first frame. All right, so frame range, you want to set that start to 1, end at 70. By frame 1 means it will render every frame. If you're trying to do stop motion or something, you know, like trying to make something look like old traditional animation on the 2s or on the 4s, you guys should know that from animation. It's basically you change, you keep one pose or one in between for 4 frames before you have another one. If you ever watch like real old time Hanna-Barbera cartoons, like Scooby-Doo or anything like that, they were usually done on the 4s, maybe even the 6s, which means that the animation is just a little bit jerky, but you know, it happens fast enough, our eyes kind of fill in the gaps. But on the 1s makes it like movie quality, smooth frames. But if you're trying to make a stop motion look, that's how you would do it. All right, so now let's go down to the renderable camera. Since we imported a camera, we have 2 cameras down here. You want to get rid of the one you don't want. You don't want 2 sets of frames. So we're going to get rid of the render cam just by clicking the little trash can next to it. Now, don't be upset and think, uh-oh, I lost the camera. No, it's still in the list. It's just not going to render out 2 sets of camera frames. If you forget to do that, you will get 1 set of frames that's animated and 1 set that's all 70 frames, just the still life. So you're going to wind up waiting for no benefit. All right, check the image size, HD 540, 960 by 540. That's good. Then we go under Arnold. Let's set it up for my I can keep that at 2. We really don't have anything going on. So you're going to set it up for whatever you had for production quality render. You're going to go to the AOVs tab and turn on output denoising AOV. This part's really important. This will give you the denoise information in your frame so we can run it through the Arnold denoiser when it's done rendering. Because unlike rendering out of Arnold's render view, where it denoises automatically, it will not denoise automatically when doing an animation. That Arnold denoiser is only good for 1 frame at a time. And you do not want to render out a frame, save it, render out another frame and save it. You want the whole thing to be automated for you. You just want to hit the render button, sit back, come back after 70 frames are done. That's living hell to have to do it frame by frame. All right, so turn that on. We're good to go. Save your scene before you do anything. So we are going to render using Maya's render view, which is this little icon up here. Many of you probably, you may have used it in the past, but this is Maya's render view. So click that. That opens up the render view. Make sure Arnold is your renderer, which it should be by default right here. Okay, then we go up to the render menu, which is right up here in Maya's render view. Go down to render sequence and you want the options. You want to make sure your camera is set for your animated camera. For the Cornell Rabbit should be CR_anim_render cam. It's selected. You are set to go. Then you click render sequence and close. This will take a while. This will take equally as long as it took each frame that you did, or your final frame that you did for project 3 to render. So I'll render out 1 frame. Well, maybe not. Maybe I'll get bored. Just call it. Now, part of the problem with using Maya's render view to render from, there's no real way to cancel the batch render other than try to force quit it, which I hate to do, but we're not going to sit around for 3 hours watching me render. That's just awful. So let me see if I can get at least 1 frame out before I do that. What's that? You said menu item? Oh, okay, thank you. I missed that, thank you. Welcome, Shardasia. All right, so like I said, I'm only going to render one frame out and then try to cancel it. Going to pretend that all my frames rendered. So it'll tell you what it's rendering. So up top, it's saying it's rendering frame 1. All right, so there it is. It did one frame, and it should kick in with frame 2 very shortly. There it is, frame 2. So like I said, unfortunately, I have to force quit out of Maya. So it's going to scream and yell that it quit unexpectedly, and do I want to send a report? Not really. So for you, you won't have to force quit out of it. There we go. Do I want to report it? No, because I did it. Come on, render man Arnold. There we go. Good. Okay. Hopefully it didn't corrupt my scene. And did it save all my settings? Oh, good, it did. Yes, yes, good. Okay, so we'll pretend that it rendered out and I got 70 frames. I'm not going to quit out of Maya yet because I need to use Maya to run the Arnold denoiser. So there is my one frame that is not denoised. So I'm going to pretend that I have 70 of those, which is right here. Ignore the fact that I have the wrong name there. But that is my Cornell rabbit animation. Yep. Step through the frames, the rabbit's moving, that's good. All right, so you will have 70 frames inside your image folder. So now we need to run the Arnold denoiser manually. To do that, we go into the Arnold menu, to the Arnold utilities, and then down to denoiser. So that looks like this. Get rid of all that. So Arnold, utilities, Arnold denoiser noise right at the top. That brings up this little window, and you want to choose your very first frame under input. So let's go back here. First frame of the animation. Output, select the desired location. Normally, it's going to try and go into the images folder, but you always want to make sure that's the right place. Don't worry about trying to rename anything here. All right, so let me find my frames. So there's my first frame. All I have to do is select the first frame, hit select. It's loaded in. Now I want to grab, I can make a new folder, put my denoised frames in a new folder, or keep them in the same folder. So honestly, it probably makes perfect sense to add a new folder. This way you don't mix denoised frames with regular normal frames. But choice is yours. I have done it both ways, and After Effects doesn't care. It will bring in the right set as long as you choose the first one. So I'm just going to leave it at the same location for now. So let me go up a level. Let's choose that. Hit open. Wait, let's cancel that first. All right, so I want to go down to output right here. That's what I want to put. So it's already selected the same folder that I'm getting my frames from here. So I'm going to leave that. It's got the right location. Start and end, you want to start it at frame 1, end it at frame 70. So temporal stability, keep it at 0. We don't need any extra frames. It tries to create extra frames sometimes. We don't need that. The variance, keep it at, put it at 0.25. It will round up to 3. Don't worry about it. Keep the pixel search radius at 9. The patch radius at 3. We don't have any AOVs. So these are basically the same settings you used inside the Arnold render view when you've got the little denoiser imager. Those are exactly the same settings. Once you have done that, you've got the right input, you've got the right output folder, you've got the right frame range, you've got the right variance. All you have to do is click the denoise button, and it will go through at the bottom in the little hint bar down here and tell you what it's doing. So it will take probably about a minute to denoise all those 70 frames. So right now it's on frame 3, 4. What it's doing also is it's looking at the frame before and the frame after to make sure the noise is not moving. Yep. Like I said, it could take several minutes to do it, depending on how long your animation is and what you have going. When it's done, it will close the denoise window. All right, so I'm going to cancel mine just because we don't have to sit here and watch me denoise frames. All right, so I'm just going to hit cancel. And in theory, there we go, it finished. It did 11 frames for me, so I can go look at those. So here they are. All nicely denoised. Now, like I said, I've already got them denoised, so I'm just going to use the denoised frames that I've got done already for After Effects to show you guys how After Effects works. All right, but you get the idea. You use the denoised frames when you're working in After Effects. All right, Any questions so far? Before I go into After Effects. If you're doing the still life, it's the same workflow, different scene file, obviously, and you're going to import a different render cam. So questions, Brianna, Chanel? How about all you guys out there in Zoom land? Brian, Clifton, Darian, Derek, Frenzy, Joni, Kentavious, Nathaniel, Shardasia. Everybody good? All right, Frenzy's good. Clifton's good. Kentavious is good. Derek is good. Shardasia is good. Okay. Excellent. Thank you. All right, so what I'm going to do at this point is we're going to pretend that I've got all my frames done. And I happen to put them in another folder right here. So let's go into After Effects. It's going to be basically the same workflow that we did with Unreal. It's exactly the same. So in order for me to do that, I have to quit out of Maya. Maya and Unreal, not very happy with each other. Okay, quit out. Let's start up Unreal, or sorry, After Effects. After a while, all these apps kind of blend together. All right, so just like we did with Unreal, you're going to start with a new project. And we're going to do new composition from footage, because we want to have After Effects do everything for us. So I have to navigate to where I have my bunny frames, Cornell Rabbit. There it is right there. So basically, you select the very first frame. And you can see in the example here I took a screenshot of, I left all my denoised frames in with the normal frames. And as long as you select the very first denoised frame, which is frame 001, it'll say, oh, open the XR footage sequence. And you say, sure. So it's going to bring it in exactly like it did in Unreal. Once it's inside, you can hit the space bar. It'll be a little bit jerky. These frames are going to be a little bit bigger than Unreal frames, file size wise. But once you get done, it should play a little smoother, almost in real time. There we go. So at this point, it's probably a good idea to save your After Effects project. So I want to make sure I put it in the right location. Like I said, I like to put it in with my frames. '21_04. Whee! Okay. Shouldn't be zooming in and out like that, but okay. That's not going to change how everything is. Let's fit. There we go. Okay. So I save my project. Make sure I select the timeline. We have to add a text layer and put the watermark on it. So layer, new, text, last name underscore first name underscore 2021-04. And if you remember from Unreal, you expand the new layer, go to transform, and you can change the position in X and Y. And you want to make sure the opacity is 15%. Going to save my project again, just to make sure everything's in there. And we should be good to go. Now we export, file, export, add to render queue. It's going to swap over from the timeline. We're going to change our output module. This time we're going to use a different Apple ProRes codec. Instead of using 422LT, we're going to be using 4444. Slightly higher quality because the Arnold frames are slightly higher quality. It's a trade-off. So under lossless, click that button. If you're on a PC, make sure your format is QuickTime. On a Mac, it should be automatic. Format options. We're going to change our codec to Apple ProRes 4444. Click OK. I like to turn off the audio since we don't have any. Everything looks good. Click OK. Custom. Now you want to change the location. You want to make sure it goes in with your frames. So let's put it in here. See rabbit. Click save. We're all set to go for the most part. We did that. We changed output to, and now we click the render button. It's going to take a little bit longer. Like I said, the frame size, file size that is slightly bigger than Unreal. Whereas Unreal did 16-bit, these are 32-bit frames. They should be anyway. So they're going to be a little bit big. Right. Let's check our movie file before we quit out. It's always a good idea. So here is the Cornell rabbit. And there we go. All set. Now I can quit out of After Effects. And all set for submission. So that takes the most amount of time. Like I said, this is a good time for a short break. We'll go for questions or anything before then. But when you come back, work on the Unreal project first. Get your frames out, because that's usually pretty quick. And then get set up so that when lab starts, you guys can either be in the middle of rendering your Arnold stuff, or you kick it off, and then you should be able to get it done in time to get any help from Frank if you need any. So, any questions before we go on break? Brianna, Chanel, they're good. They're my 2 campus students. Brian, Clifton, Darian, Derek, Frenzy, Joni, Kentavious, Nathaniel, Shardasia. Anybody have any questions about the workflow, about Unreal, Maya, using the Arnold denoiser, After Effects? Everybody good? Kentavious, I would update it only because that is the 4.25.4 is the final version of 4.25, which means they've got all the bugs worked out. I would recommend updating it. You're welcome. That way you can be sure that it's compatible with what we're trying to do. All right, great question. Any others? All right, so let's take a quick break. That'll give me a chance to render out the first part of lecture, or actually there's only going to be one actual lecture part today. Get it uploaded, and hopefully if anybody needs to rewatch what we've gone over for the workflow or just any procedural information, you'll be able to have that. So let's go and come back at 10:55. And as always, I have to end the session so that I can render out of Zoom. So I'll see you guys back here at 10:55.